The Board of Directors of DCTA to order. It is 10 a.m. We do have a quorum. I'm going to beg Mr. Smith if he wouldn't mind leading us in our invocation.
Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us again together in this new year, and thank you for the opportunity we have to serve the citizens of Denton County. Pray for wisdom and discernment for the men and women on this table, staff, and for the leadership of DCTA. Thank you for all the blessings you've showered upon them, for the progress we've made, and helping to make DCTA just a strong example of teamwork, leadership, of innovation, and we pray that you continue to help us to forward the cause of helping people to get to where they need to be and to improve the quality of life of all the citizens of our communities. In your son's name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Ms. McGuire, would you mind doing the pledges?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Right. Mr. Christina, what do we have for introductions today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to point over to Mr. Marina, our representative from the colony, to introduce a new alternate board member who's with us.
Morning. Oh, I got my. Good morning, board. I'm Jerry Marina with the City of the Colony. I've been reelected for 2 more years of being here on the board, so I'll be hanging out back here in the corner for a bit. But in the event I'm not here, which is going to be for the strategic retreat, we're going to be appointing Stefan Christo with our city manager's office, who will also be coming in and filling in the spots that I can't. So welcome him to the board. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Next up is public comment. This agenda item provides an opportunity for citizens to address the Board of Directors on any agenda items or other matters relating to DCTA. Each speaker will be given a total of 3 minutes to address any items, and anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. Speakers making personal, impertinent, profane, or slanderous remarks may be removed from the meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, clapping, and similar demonstrations will not be permitted. We do have one request, and that is Liam Gom Wakefield. If I slaughtered the pronunciation there, my apologies.
You got it right.
Thank you.
Just push the button again. It's been a while since I've done this.
Yep, you're good. Green light,
All right.
green light, go.
All right. Hello. All right. Hello. My name's Liam Gom Wakefield. I'm from Denton. I'm just coming up because you're going to be addressing this later in the meeting, but I just wanted to say, like, I've been looked at the November to October to December data, and like it's been really good. But I've been recently taking the bus more often. But my main issue, like if I'm taking the bus during the day or in the mornings, I'm perfectly fine. I can do what I need to do. But I find if I'm staying around the square later at night, like later, I have an issue that the bus stops at 10:30. But the people that, the things I do often go longer than 10:30. And it makes it hard to be spontaneous and go out and do trips when you know you have to be back, like get at a bus stop at 10, otherwise you're walking home. And that's especially not fun in the cold or the heat. But this is moving in the right direction, the data, and the A train's doing great, which I'm happy to see that. And also, I guess, and I know you're still talking about it and looking at the data, but having the route on University and also Loop 288, and then changing up 3 to affect those changes would be really great for the community, because of another east-west and another north-south for the city. Thank you so much for your time. Have a nice day.
Thank you for the input. All right, next up, we have a consent agenda. These items will be considered with one motion. If there's anything that we need pulled, I do not have any requests for anything to be moved off the consent. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, consent agenda passes unanimously. Regular agenda, discuss and consider authorizing the chief executive officer to negotiate and execute a master services agreement with Ruby Media, DBA DHD Films for a 3-year initial term and up to 2 one-year renewals for marketing communication support. This is an action item, and Jackie Bronson will be presenting. Good morning, Jackie.
And members of the board. This morning, there are 2 consecutive agenda items before you. For agenda item 1, staff recommends the board authorize the chief executive officer to negotiate and execute a master services agreement with Ruby Media for a 3-year initial term and up to 2 one-year renewals for marketing communication support. And for agenda item 2, staff recommends the board authorize the chief executive officer to execute task order 01 with Ruby Media in the amount not to exceed $200,000 for marketing and communication support for the period February 1, 2025 through September 30, 2025. If you will recall, when we were together in August, the agency restructured the marketing department from 5 full-time positions to 3 full-time positions, and at the time collaborated with an external marketing firm for 6 months for assistance. 2 of those remaining positions are vacant that you'll see here while we continue to evaluate our needs. And while we have 2 specific titles listed on the slide here, the department and the agency are remaining flexible on the nature and title of these marketing positions to ensure that they align best with the needs and goals of the organization. During that 6-month period that we worked with external assistants, we learned a lot, to include the importance of focusing on our customers and building relationships, which we would intend to focus the internal team on. And the external support in areas such as marketing strategy, social media, creativity, and professional production was sought through the RFP process. Staff released the RFP to secure these professional services for marketing and communication support in September of this year. Evaluations for respondents began in October, with interviews taking place in November. Staff received 8 responses to the RFP and proceeded to interview the 3 highest scoring respondents. The criteria evaluated for these firms centered around project understanding, approach to project delivery, and how they would work with the staff to ensure the goals of the organization. At the conclusion of those interviews, 1 firm received the highest score from the selection panel, which was Ruby Media. Items that stand out about Ruby Media are their alignment with our current goals, their innovative approach to marketing, their commitment to team cohesion, and their local community presence and strong track record and references. Ruby Media is led by DHD Films and features Mixed Media Creations, who has a proven track record in delivering high-quality creative assets, both for DCTA and others in transit and the public sector. Staff believes this partnership will give us the right team to have a successful annual marketing and communications plan, high-performing advertising campaigns, and you will continue to see elevated graphics, maps, and signage, as well as watch us work together to improve the website, allowing internal staff to focus on brand development and business and community outreach and relationships. To move forward with this partnership, a task order is required. The monthly retainer for these services listed throughout the presentation is $25,000 a month, which equates to $200,000 for the remainder of this fiscal year to cover the items we've listed. This amount is available in the current fiscal year marketing budget. There is an additional hourly rate by task as needed for items outside of the scope, ranging from $135 to $200 per hour. Staff intends to evaluate the performance of this partnership and consider an FY25 budget item for a new task order under this master services agreement, which will be brought forward at a future date.
And I think to make this calmer or easier, we're also going to open discussion on item 2 since I didn't read that, so no worries. We'll go ahead and make sure that both item 1 and 2 for public comment are now open on the floor.
Perfect. All right, that is the end of my information. And so as such, staff recommends the board authorize the chief executive officer to negotiate and execute a master services agreement with Ruby Media for a 3-year initial term and up to 2 one-year renewals for marketing and communication support. Additionally, staff recommends the board authorize the chief executive officer to execute task order 01 with Ruby Media in an amount not to exceed $200,000 for marketing and communication support for the period February 1, 2025 through September 30, 2025. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Open this up for conversation, discussion.
I'll make a motion that we. Thank you. I'll make a motion that we recommend that the chief executive officer negotiate and execute a master service agreement with Ruby Media for the initial 3-year term with up to 2 one-year renewals for marketing communication support.
All right, we have a motion for item 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Yes, need a second.
Oh, you need a second. Yeah, I can't move that fast.
Second.
Sorry. Now, I've got a second from member McGuire. So with that, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Do I have a recommendation for item 2?
I recommend approval of authorization of the CEO to execute task order number 1 with Ruby Media in an amount not to exceed $200,000 for marketing and communications support.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Dan. I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Right. Item 3, discuss and consider approval of task order 01 with H.W. Lochner in an amount not to exceed $368,255.56 for initial program management tasks and validation of curve and speed improvements. Austin Frith, VP Planning and Development, take it away.
Chair, members of the board, Happy New Year. We're going to talk A-Train today. So our agenda item here is recommending the board approve task order 01 with H.W. Lochner in amount not to exceed $368,255.56 for the work of the initial program management task and validation of curve and speed improvements. So the slide that we've shared before from the December board. This is our initial work plan. We're going to prioritize the operational and model that we currently have with the A-Train, as well as the infrastructure program that's going to be required for the program. Within that, we're going to establish project controls and create a clear schedule for deliverables to drive accountability and ensure the timely delivery of our program. We're also going to identify and resolve any glaring issues that we have in the overall program within this timeline and ensure program execution aligns with the requirements such as funding, regulatory requirements, and stakeholder engagement. You've also seen this slide too. This is our decision matrix within the program. As you'll see in the green box, that's currently where we're at within the matrix. As you see, we've got a lot of elements that are forthcoming within our program. So this is essentially kicking us off within this decision matrix. You've also seen this slide too before. This is our string line chart with the A-Train corridor. The blue line is going to be our proposed track speed improvements. The red line is our current track speed improvements. Key takeaway here is we're trying to get this train faster along the corridor. What that's going to hopefully allow us to do is get a 3 to 5 minute runtime improvement. And what we'll do with that improvement, we'll discuss in a later slide. So within the task order 1, the key activities here, we're going to validate, plan, and coordinate the A-Train overall program. Make sure that the overall program, we can achieve those 15-minute headways as recommended by the board. We're going to complete the existing design work for the curve and speed enhancements. That's going to get us to that 5-minute overall runtime improvement. We're going to look at the schedule sketch, define the scope, and really map out what the program is and how long these major elements are going to take. We're going to align ourselves by mapping out the details within each program element. And we're also going to look at subsequent task orders that will be required to execute this program. Here's our timeline within the task order 01. Upon validation of the final design, the speed and curve enhancements. We begin stakeholder coordination, FRA and REA and others. And then upon construction funding allocation for this speed and curve enhancement, we're projected to start implementation in late fall with hopefully completing this first element within this calendar year. So here are the subsequent task orders we anticipate upcoming. We would like to start looking at initiating preliminary design for the 15-minute frequency. We want to assess late night operations. As we mentioned before, we want to get to a point where we can make that connection to DFW Airport and the flights coming in and out of that regional destination. We want to explore PTC alternatives. As you all aware, we operate a different PTC system than DART, so we would like to look at alternatives to align there. We'd like to model freight and passenger movement along this corridor. We do run along the same line as our DG&O partners, so we want to understand what that movement looks like long-term. And then evaluate and define any additional track needs and define, again, the potential funding avenues to get our program executed. So with that, we'd like to recommend the board approve this task order with Lochner, amount not to exceed $368,255.56 for this initial program management task order validation and curve and speed.
All right. We'll open this to questions or comments. Paul?
Mr. Chairman, if I may just say thank you to Austin for his work on this, as well as the Lochner staff, our procurement team. A lot of people went into getting us to this point. One thing that was, I think it's on the slide just prior to the timeline, it talks about it says DCTA staff will provide alternatives and train operation cost estimates due to the additional train miles, crew hours, et cetera. When we run a modified schedule and the train runs faster, you put more trains on the track at the same, in a given day. And so that drives operating cost differentials. While the technical team at Lochner is doing the infrastructure work, our staff is going to be working on what do those financial impacts look like on the operating side, so that when you all make a decision on this, you understand what is the full scope of the impact.
Yeah.
So just wanted to make sure we mark that, but feel like we've covered that before. So thank you.
I'd love to, as we do that analysis, kind of look at that alongside the I-35 corridor travel times. So we can kind of get a cost comparison or a time comparison for people. I know with the numbers continuing to grow on the A train, we're doing something right. I think that this is going to be a huge improvement. And if we can get those numbers, I think it'll help the general public go, hey, the train is a really good option for me. So I have, oh, go ahead.
Question, and continue the discussion. So we would potentially be able to start operating if the board decides to do this, a different schedule as early as this time next year?
So there's, I think that's going back to Paul's point, it has its runtime savings.
Yeah.
What we do with it is an option. We can either
Mhm.
allow it to keep its schedule.
Right.
Keep either end as kind of buffer time for recovery.
Yeah.
Or we could change the schedule and just make the train run faster on that schedule.
Right, but what you were saying is the design would be done, the construction would be implemented, and the commissioning, the testing would be completed sometime around December, January?
That would be our goal.
Okay.
But most of the work that's happening on the curve and speed is going to be software upgrades and some minor civil track work.
Okay.
So it's not a huge impact from a construction
On the
standpoint.
construction side, okay. Okay, thank you.
Other comments, concerns, questions? I do have a motion from our secretary. Do I have a second?
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 4, discuss and consider approval of fiscal year 2024 Transportation Reinvestment Program Annual Report and fiscal year 2025 TRIP Annual Call for Projects. This is an action item. We do have Donato, our planning manager, and Austin Frith available as well.
Good morning, project manager. So today's item is to discuss and consider approval of the fiscal year 24 Transportation Reinvestment Annual Report, as well as the fiscal year 2025 TRIP Annual Call for Projects. So staff does recommend approval of the 24 trip annual report as well as the fiscal year 25 trip annual call for projects. And I'll kind of briefly go over the trip program at a high level. So just as a reminder and a quick recap, the Transportation Reinvestment Program, or TRIP, is a capital assistance program where DCTA partners with our member cities for transit supportive projects that do support the goals of our 2012 long-range service plan and focus on improving mobility in our service areas. This does align with our mission of getting people where they need to and want to go for work, play, and life. So also recap on the TRIP process. So this program has been in effect since fiscal year 21 and moving forward with the approval of the TRIP policy. So just a high level outline, we've already passed step 1 as that was part of the annual budgeting process. At that time, you saw what the fiscal year 25 allocation would be. And now we are at step 2, which opens the call in January and identifies what the total available funding for this call would be. As we move through the process, once the call is opened, there will be a 90-day period for applications to be submitted. And then we'll go through that review process and bring those items to the board for consideration. So the TRIP program does have its own policy and procedure for how those funds are identified. The annual TRIP budget is 15% of DCTA's net available funds from the previous year's balance set aside. We can skip over the 2 million from capital assistance set aside. That was at the initiation of the TRIP program. So that is not done annually as a one-time kind of set aside. And as we receive those allocation numbers, they're distributed amongst our member cities based on the formula that you see on the screen. And within that, any unobligated funds from every fiscal year's call does roll over. So I'll go over that in a little bit more detail about how we get to the total number. This is a slide you have been seeing over the past couple months and just want to make sure that we maintain some consistency with it. So you have kind of an idea of progress as we go through this program. So between fiscal year 2021 and 2024, we've had total annual authorizations, meaning funding made available to our member cities, of $39.1 million. Of that money, 32.1 has been obligated into projects for each of those member cities combined. As we move forward in the program, we see that as these projects go through fruition, they go through their planning and design and ultimately construction, we see those reimbursements, as this is a reimbursement program. We've seen up to date 4.2 million reimbursed to our member cities. And I'll go through those in a little bit more detail. But the table on that screen shows how, as we go through this program, how much has been spent as part of the total annual authorization, as well as how much has been spent towards the total obligation. I will note that this is slightly out of date as we're currently processing an additional invoice. And so some of the City of Denton numbers will increase by a few points. Now for a summary of our annual report. This is an exhibit in your packet, so I won't go into extreme detail, but I'll start with the City of Louisville's projects. As you can see, over the course of this program, 7 projects have been obligated for the City of Louisville. 1 is complete and does have a remaining balance at the end of that project. I've highlighted in red because you'll see this later in the slides, which is the remaining balance then goes back into the pot to be reallocated towards any new projects that are selected. The majority of these projects remaining, you'll see L2 through L5, are in the final design stage. And as these projects are awarded for design, we'll start beginning to see some of those reimbursements come in. 1 is under construction, and 1 is our fiscal year 24 award, which is the L6. And so you'll see that we're still in the execution of agreements process. For the City of Highland Village, there was 1 project obligated at the fiscal year 21 stage of this call for projects. That project has been complete and no other projects have been submitted. And then on to the City of Denton. There are plenty of projects. The City of Denton has obligated 23 projects over the course of this program. for a mix of design and construction. Let me go to my notes really quickly because I don't want to go piece by piece, but there's a lot. 7 projects have been completed. 7 are actively under construction. You'll see that the item in red, which is D15, that project has been complete, which is the all-way crossing in the downtown Denton area, with a remaining balance. So the remaining balance will, just like the city of Louisville, return to the available funding for the fiscal year 25 program. There's a few projects that are slightly delayed, but those are due to maybe adjustments in scope to better serve DCTA's network. And so staff is actively working with the city of Denton to make sure that we have a project within scope that continues to move forward. So on to the fiscal year 25 call for projects available funding. So when I talked about allocation earlier and what we talked about of what you saw through the budgeting process, to remind me how to use this. Oh, there you go. So if you see this number here, fiscal year 25 trip allocation, these are the numbers that went through the budgeting process. So this is about $5.9 million as the baseline. Then you see through the course of the fiscal year projects, we had remaining balances where funds were not obligated into projects. From there, you see that we had a total rollover of about $7.4 million that is now available in this current fiscal year call. We had 2 projects, as I mentioned earlier, that had completions and return balances. So that adds an additional $800,000 back to the pot for availability. The last item I'll flag is we had a fiscal year 25 pre-award application for the city of Louisville that came in September. So that amount is reduced from the total available funding. So overall, that brings us to $13.7 million being available in this final fiscal year 25 call for projects under the current policy. And then you can see the amounts broken down for each individual member city. So this is a large total and a lot of opportunity for this fiscal year 25 call. And then one last note, what that does for the total annual authorizations, that $39.1 million over the course of this program now will jump to $45 million available through total authorization. So I'll just briefly go over this. This is kind of the math that gets us to those numbers. And the one item that's highlighted is just to demonstrate what the rollover amount came from. So this is a number that we would have seen in September when we talked about the fiscal year 25 pre-award. So now for next steps, the fiscal year 25 call for projects opens today with approval by the board. And the key dates that we focus on are that 90-day window for application submittals. That brings us to a date of April 23rd for applications being due. May 23rd is a deadline for staff to review those applications. And then in June and July, you'll see applications come forward for initial review and consideration and then final approval in July. So all of that information is also in an exhibit in your packet, which is the application packet. And our member cities will be notified officially after this board meeting of the opening official notice of funding. And with that, I'll take any questions, but staff does recommend approval of both the annual report and the call for projects.
Board, questions, comments, concerns? I want to thank Highland Village for getting those projects done. That's awesome. I also, looking at the numbers from the other 2 cities, there's a tremendous amount of work that's going to get completed here in 25. So really excited to see that. So we'll just keep moving the ball. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, staff. Appreciate all the work and the math. Regular agenda, item 5. We're going to discuss update on the intermediate service plan, and that's with Austin Frith.
Morning again. So we're gonna discuss the ISP phase 1, and then we'll get into a little bit about phase 2 and where we're headed. So sit back, relax. We got a lot of data coming your way. I'm gonna ask you to geek out with me for a little bit with this data. So phase one, we implemented on August 19th of 24. That included a 20-minute frequency investment on our Connect Route 3, 6, and 7 to increase that frequency and align it with a 7 to 9 Monday through Friday schedule. Within that same ISP plan, we did implement a new boundary for go zone requests. So any requests that were essentially origin and destination within that buffer would now get a connect proposal to board a bus instead of taking the go zone. So what have we seen since then? So year over year, right now, we're looking at a 31% ridership uptick. One thing to note here that we did was actually for the fall semester, we implemented a Discovery Park Express service, which essentially was a direct connect from Discovery Park campus down to UNT, mirrored a route that Connect 6 would do. So if we combine Connect 6 with Discovery Park, Connect is actually up almost 61%, or 63%, excuse me. So long story short, it looks like this implementation did work for us. So we're excited to see what the future holds moving forward with this. On the go zone front, so as you recall, as I just mentioned, we did remove go zone capacity from that Connect area. Right now, we are fairly flat on year-over-year performance for go zone ridership. This also is in the line with the shift of go zone capacity from Denton to other areas within the region. So diving into the performance data per city, so top left is our Denton performance year over year. As you can see, as we've reduced the service hours in Denton, the passenger ridership goes down. But what you'll also see is consequently Highland Village and Louisville, as we reduce Denton, Highland Village and Louisville go up as far as ridership. So there's a direct correlation there that we want to make sure we acknowledge. So we've shared this slide with the board last year as well. And this is essentially our two-stage approach for capacity within Go Zone. Our strategy is to manage these capacities in two stages. Our first stage we acted on back in August, actually about 4,500 hours per week. And then what we want to do is allow the additional stage 2 to come in if and when that's needed. If we do see fluctuations in capacity and demand, we have the ability to exercise that extra 300 hours. As of today, we have not exercised that, but it's there if we need it. So this data set showcases how we're performing on service hours by city. As I mentioned, the green line is our service change. And as you can see, we start reducing service hours in Denton with that Connect increase. And as we did that, you can see the service hours gradually increase on Louisville and Highland Village. Our KPIs for service hours are the yellow line. So you can see we're fairly in line with those. We fluctuate here and there, but the KPIs are being met on the service hours for the most part. Here's the Denton service performance update. So as I mentioned, we've reduced service hours in Denton. Seat unavailability, we've been able to handle pretty well as wait time. We've haven't exceeded our KPIs overall. And then here's Louisville. As we increase service hours there, those seat unavailability and wait times have gone down. Highland Village, similar story here. We do see wait times being fairly underneath that KPI as well as seat unavailability. You will see some peaks and valleys here what we want to mention here is because we're actively managing week over week, if we see a spike happen, we're able to adjust it, and then you'll see that those subsequent weeks, we've responded pretty well there. So phase two, what are we doing here? So essentially, we're focusing on network efficiencies within the network. We're looking at opportunities to expand the GO zone buffer around the UNT main campus, Discovery Park campuses, and TWU. We want to look at existing routes within UNT network and identify opportunities to consolidate those routes, making them more efficient and easier for the rider to understand. We're looking at our cost per passenger numbers and comparing the cost to operate UNT network plus the option of GO zone or connect. What does that look like? And then we've identified significant demand around University Drive that we feel could benefit from a fixed route at some point in the future. And then we also want to look at the cost trade-offs of what does a full year UNT service look like? Additionally, we're planning to begin the redevelopment of our bus stop amenities and guideline standards. And that would incorporate an update that we could potentially implement new standards within our phase two program. And then just as a side note, we do want to look at incorporating how the A train fits in with this multimodal selection. So we are looking with partnering with VIA and the app to provide the A train as another mode option within all these elements. So when we look at network efficiencies, what have we done? So I want to send a kudos out to the teams that have been working on this. We essentially had a couple workshops where we laid out all of the UNT routes. We looked at what was operating today, and then what could we make more efficient? What could we consolidate? What would make sense for the university or City of Denton rider to really make this network more cohesive. So initial findings show that there are efficiencies within this network that could potentially consolidate existing routes from 14 to 9. And as you'll see in subsequent slides, this is accomplished through removing duplicative routes and consolidating routes that have different names into one singular route. So I've got a few examples to showcase here. First example is Center Place 151 route. We could potentially consolidate Center Place, Daughtry Street, and Evening Off Campus. This new route would run the entire scheduled length of all three. And it would involve removing a stop at Leonard, but relocating a stop within the NTX. This is something that we feel is pretty low-hanging fruit, makes a lot of sense for us. When we look at it from a times and ridership standpoint, existing, we've got 3 routes. Here's the ridership numbers. If we do consolidate that route, this is what that ridership would look like. And again, it's taking 3, somewhat fairly good performing routes, consolidating into one that we feel could be one really high ridership route in the future. Same thing we did with Main Green, consolidating 4 routes into one. These changes would allow us to relocate and reduce resources on multiple routes. And again, this is another element. We've got Main Green Night Rider Plus, Main Green Night Rider, Eagle Point. Students and riders have to understand this. What could we do to make it more efficient, more effective to understand, and essentially making one Main Green route that would encompass all of those. And this is what that ridership and time point looks like. And yep, a lot of consolidation here, which is good. And then finally, this is a fairly simpler one. This would consolidate North Texas and Evening Off Campus for the portion that serves the west side of UNT. The portion that serves the east and south would be covered under a Center Place route consolidation. And the summary here is, even though it's not a large quantity of routes, we are making it easier for the rider to understand. It's essentially one route, and we're not duplicating services here. And this is what that ridership looks like, and then once we combine it. And again, you'll see this North Texas route stops at 7, and then EOC picks it up, essentially the same route. So why do we need both? I think our recommendation is to simplify it and have one route that does the entire route and extends the schedule. So switching over to Go Zone ridership within the campus areas, we looked at the main campus areas of TWU, UNT, and UNT Discovery Park. We looked at what we see from our data is that 38% of all Denton Go Zone rides are originating or ending within TWU or the UNT campus area. As a first step, we explored a strategy where we implemented our Connect service last year. We could implement a similar strategy here, looking at Go Zone buffer area for origin and destination areas. Fairly straightforward implementation that could push Go Zone rides to fixed route where we have this duplicative service of Go Zone and fixed route. So this is just some data sets that we're seeing from these main areas of the campuses. What does that look like on a map? So we zoomed in for TWU just to give you context. So origin or destination, so essentially somebody requesting a ride or ending a ride within the TWU campus. We've got about almost 5% of our overall Go Zone trips that are happening there. And then when we zoom in on just origin and destinations, essentially within that campus, I'm taking a ride from one end of the campus to the other. It's about 0.24%. So it's not a huge number, but again, these students, these individuals can be taking an existing route there instead of requesting Go Zone. We looked at UNT, the main campus, so origin or destination, about 31% are happening within the UNT main campus and a quarter-mile buffer. And then Discovery Park, about 3.5% that are happening there. So again, we're taking all this data and we're understanding, okay, what makes sense to do as low-hanging fruit and what makes sense to look at more long-term strategies to implement. So what's next? So what we did here was we created essentially buffer zones around the top 5 UNT routes, UNT and TW campuses, our connect routes, and as you'll see up there, a future University Drive route. And what we're seeing is if we did implement some type of buffer with this strategy, we could absorb about 43% of origin destinations within those zones. So this is good data to have. You can see some of the hotspots of where those are happening, but this is the mindset of how do we not provide duplicative service and how do we make sure that we're providing the right service for the right entity. And then as we look at our bus stop improvement program, this was a slide we shared with you all last year. This is the work that coordinated with the ISP phase 1, where we implemented 18 new bus stops to support that buffer zone implementation. These stops were strategically placed based on ridership data from Go Zone and the buses, as well as adjacent points of interest. So that's been completed. This is step 2 that we also have started to work on. It was to review our existing stops, including the 18 new ones, set up some evaluation criteria that we could weigh and determine the highest and best use for our infrastructure budget. Then we looked at each of those stops and created bus stop amenity hierarchies for the top stops. So these were the top 10 stops that we identified based on that weighted criteria within the Connect network. And these are the 10 stops we're going to focus on within the Connect network to implement potentially new bus stop standards. So the next step in this process is to develop those bus stop and amenity standards for each stop type. As you'll see in the green chart there, those are the different stop types we initially identified. The scope of work will develop technical design standards for each of the stop types. And then as we finalize these standards, the plan would be to apply the new standards on this next phase of ISP. and move forward with that. And that is my update for ISP Phase 2. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Mr. Smith?
Thanks so much. You may probably are aware that or TW is greatly expanding to the east all the way to Riddell.
Mhm.
Are y'all talking to them about additional or modifications to those bus routes? Because that's quite a walk from Bell Street all the way to Riddell. And that might be something you want to start thinking about as part of this overall scheme.
Yeah, we have been in discussions with TW. We're probably due for another one just to get an update with where they're at. We are aware of that development and we are looking at how does that feed into these future stops and future routes.
Great.
Yes, sir.
In looking at your maps, when you start doing your combining, it starts looking like making perfect sense. But then I noticed there were tails getting longer, either to the north or to the south. And I just wondered how many riders or whatever are people that get on off that combined part and go all the way up. Does it make their ride considerably longer, just a little bit, or what?
Right. So that's some of the next steps that we're gonna be working on is not only like the cost analysis for this consolidation, but also who's being affected by that and that community outreach that we'll have to do. So that is something we're gonna look at into the future.
Look really nice when it's really compact.
Right.
But you kind of wonder about the person when you got to going by the grocery store today.
That's a good one. Yeah, agree.
Other comments or questions? Got two real quick, Austin. And first one, I don't know if I can get an answer on today. So,
Okay.
when we expanded the Go Zone geofence, or as I think of it, area of denial,
Okay.
to move rides to connect, what percentage of those rides did we end up capturing? So we knew we had some X number of Go Zone rides,
Right,
and the intent was to move them on to connect.
right.
So how do is there a way for us to capture that? I think there is,
Yeah,
but I don't think we've done it yet.
I would say we won't know explicitly, like nobody checks in the app, okay, I'm gonna take the bus and confirms.
Right.
But I think what we could do is look at, we knew we were thinking 10% of all the Go Zone rides would go away.
Mhm.
We need to look at what's the increase, the corresponding increase.
Increase in
We
Connect,
we
yeah.
can correlate those numbers.
so.
It won't be exact, it
I'm
won't
not
be
asking for
exact, but it'll
exact,
be
but
a
yeah.
ballpark.
I mean, because that's the lever that we want to see,
The adoption
the
rate.
efficiency
Help
of
us
the
understand the
adoption rate.
adoption rate, yeah.
So that'd be great. Okay, would love to get that at some future point. And then I think just as we look at this and as I'm thinking through this, right now we're running 2,670 hours a week in Denton on Go Zone. And what I'm seeing here, I just want to make sure my head's wrapped around this right. We're looking at either 30 or 40% of the 30 to 43% of those rides, Go Zone rides, are actually, we're hoping to be able to migrate them onto Connect based on the conversations here.
Right.
So as a board, we need to be considering anywhere from 800 to 1,100 hours of Go Zone funding for capital projects, movement into Louisville Highland Village, or just stashing in the bank somewhere. Is my head wrapped around that
Yeah,
correctly?
and I think we also are looking at other areas of Denton that maybe aren't served by a fixed route or Go Zone today, expanding in Denton as well.
And
So,
I-
yeah.
I believe that's a fair conversation. I will also say that, Denton is getting 2 services. And so that's a conversation we have to have. So, Denton is also 102 square miles, 100 square miles, and Louisville Highland Village is like 45 square miles. So 100% coverage of one is a order of magnitude higher than the other. And, when it comes down to it, when I look at operational loading, how much of those dollars are coming back to the cities that help fund them? And it needs to be proportional. I don't think it needs to be exact, but that's the conversation. And I just want to have that kind of out here. That is the conversation that this is going to queue up for the board here as we go through this change. I think it's great because we're using the data to get more density and to be able to use Connect the way it was supposed to be used. So I'm not hearing as many people complaining about empty buses. I'm just not, which is wonderful. And we need to continue down that road. And I think this gives us the implementation. Very excited to see the data, but I just wanted to clear that my head was on the right track as far as what this is going to create for us and the
There will be a
opportunities.
decision that we'll have to make.
You all will have a chunk of capacity for Go Zone that you'll have the opportunity to decide what to do with it.
Sure. Now, here's my question on that. Is that dollar tied to Ozone, or is that dollar just that we'll have a revenue decision to
That-
make?
Right, it's a revenue allocation decision.
Got it.
We have an operating budget that's established every year. If you want to maintain the same operating budget year over year and you're spending less on Go Zone, what do you do with that number?
Right.
And you laid out those alternatives.
Okay.
So.
And just for the sake of kind of signaling my thought process as well, in regard to this issue, obviously this is a decision that we need to make about what we're going to do with this freed up revenue. I totally agree that I want to see additional investment in the other two zones. I personally would also be willing to consider an increase in the Go Zone budget for the purpose of, for example, expanding into the West Park area in Denton specifically.
Mhm.
Not necessarily 100% coverage of the city, but I'm just really hearing a lot of folks in the city of Denton who really, really want to see coverage of that West Park area in particular. And if the numbers work out that it's an either or kind of a thing, we can't cover West Park and also increase to Louisville, I would be open to increasing the Go Zone budget in order to facilitate both of those.
And just so you're kind of clear where I am on, there are definitely some areas in Denton where there's the warehouse distribution district there on the.
Yeah.
Was that the west side? That is West Park? Okay. My infamiliarity with the northern part of the county. But I talked with Gary Henderson with the United Way, and he said that there's definitely some opportunity there that he's been asked by various businesses about how can we create more transit options for employees for those centers. So there's definitely, in my head, that's an opportunity in Denton that's, I think, maybe low hanging fruit.
I'd love for us to expand out there, and maybe we just work with those businesses and figure out what their shifts are. Are they 24/7, or is there a peak in the morning, peak in the afternoon? We're on all day, every day. There's just a peak demand to service it. All right.
There's no decision to be made on this. Is there any other conversation to be had? Thank you. Appreciate it. If I can get my head wrapped around it, you did a great job. Item 6, discuss the update on the Denton County Transportation Authority Transformation Initiative and 5-year roadmap for fiscal year 23 through fiscal year 27. Paul, Christina, as team.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the time today. I want to give you an update on where we stand with our transformation initiative. This is a discussion item. No action is required. If you recall, last January at our strategic offsite, I laid out a graphic that looked like this, and it was historic ridership at DCTA by year, starting in 2011 when the A train was launched, and mapped out the milestones the agency has hit with regard to the reseating of the DCTA board, the reworking of bylaws, the changeover of staff, all that sort of stuff, and how all those activities got us to, we were thinking about transformation, we've defined transformation, we're initiating transformation, and then we're into a new long-term implementation phase. Where we're at right now is this 5-year period between 2023 and 2027, where Accenture, the management consulting firm that the board hired in order to help navigate the transformation, had identified 30 priority initiatives. These initiatives were really laid out to help the board establish the agency that would be needed to serve this Benton County and our member cities into the long term. These were not primarily service-oriented types of initiatives. These were real agency infrastructure type initiatives on helping the agency to make good decisions, deliver good service, all that sort of thing. One of the pieces of this transformation initiative was that staff and the board should revisit this on an annual basis to make sure that we're all aligned, that we're still going in the right direction and all on the same page as to where we stand. And so gave the first briefing last year in January and said, at that point, we had finished 8 of these initiatives. We were in process on 14 and we had not started 8. What I'd like to do today is talk to you about how it appears, or it would seem, that we have now finished 10 and we're in process on the other 20, and we don't have any more that are still in that red, haven't started it yet column. So
So there's capacity.
we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. So here's this matrix is, and this was in the board slides, in the slides that went out, and we just highlighted it high level in the memo. But this is listing all 30 of those initiatives, and then in the first column there, fiscal year 2024 status, green, yellow, red. In the second column, fiscal year 2025 status, you see a couple of the items that went from yellow to green. I'm saying 5-year roadmap communication. We've got a framework for that now. We are talking regularly in the context of what's our 5-year plan, and then what's our long range service plan is going to be. That's a big step for us. The other one, enhancing awareness of customer experience. Our integration of DCTA and NTMC, which was where the primary part of our customer experience interface was happening, has been tremendous for us to be able to be aware of that. And what's really exciting is the things that we're now saying have started. We're really going to go into a deeper dive on in our strategic workshop, because they all revolve around enhancing the customer experience. And so what you see is in 25 is also where we expect to be on these initiatives by the end of the year. And if they're not finished or in process by the end of this year, then we're starting to loosely slot where we think they're going to end up in the last couple of years of this 5-year plan, targeting for some quartile in fiscal year 2026 and fiscal year 2027. I won't go through all of these things in details, but just highlighting things that we were first talking about were finished in last fiscal year. We began an initiative on-time performance, and we made really good progress there. We made internal improvements to processes to get documents managed, all that sort of thing. We reworked our IT department to allow them to focus on innovation and the evolution of our service. Bus announcement system, when we implemented the Swiftly platform and now have enunciators, we've finished. Those are the types of things that we've already accomplished. So far this fiscal year, going from yellow to green, again, those 2 pieces, the roadmap communication, enhancing customer experience awareness, and then things that we think that we're aiming to have complete this year, we've integrated really into our work plan, as we've gotten another thing that we bring into this conversation year over year of the things that we're going to do. Bus maintenance and parts management solution is part of the finance enterprise resource plan program that we're putting together. Data collection and management processes. The briefing that you all just got would have been significantly more difficult for us to pull together had we not done the work to begin building this data infrastructure and having a person on our staff, and Andrew Fadner, whose sole job it is to collect, aggregate, and provide a single source of truth for the agency. So that is the result of the investment that you all have made in that kind of capacity. And then exploring opportunities to expand the membership service area. By the end of this year, the Regional Transit 2.0 initiative will be done. We have been very much tied into that over the course of this year, and will allow the board to make decisions on how we go about that process. And that'll be another topic we cover in our strategic workshop, our new member and contracted services policy. Things that we're working on this year that have a future completion date. Our ERP, we're going to have finance done this year. Human resources will be done next year. When the ERP is up and we have our data infrastructure up, we're going to be able to start tying explicitly and automatically operational data with financial data. And then these things that we talked about just a couple of months ago with regard to the vision for enhancing the customer service organization, that's what you see right here. Again, all customer focused things that, because of the things we're doing that we said were important 5 years ago, the board's able to say we're making the right progress. Things that we're starting this year, again, more more on customer experience that Javier is going to lay the vision out for. Multimodal trip planning capability, I want to highlight that one because we started the first fruits of that with the intermediate service plan phase 1. The fact that you can go onto the GoZone app and get a bus proposal and a GoZone proposal, and sometimes the app will say, no, you really need to take the bus. At this point, that is the first steps toward the multimodalism in the trip planning side. Austin talked about integrating the GTFS feed for the train into the GoZone app. And so ultimately, 2026 and beyond, it is, I'm trying to get from point A to point B. I can go through the GoZone app and I can get a ride on a GoZone to a transfer point on a fixed route that can take me to my final destination, or vice versa, if that service is available. So, in summation, what we see is progress on the transformation initiative year over year. And in fiscal 25, the big wins in the context of the transformation initiative that show up in our work plan. We're working hard on policies and procedures, clarifying our new member and contracted services policy, ERP, ops data automation, and then you see some of the other things that we anticipate will be major cornerstones of the work plan through 2027. As always, we appreciate the board's flexibility and willingness to listen as we say, we launch these very ambitious work plans year over year, and then come about this time of year, we're going, okay, there's a lot and we're all fully engaged. What might be able to slide? What might be able to get pulled forward? We appreciate you all's engagement with us on that so we can balance the resources internally and keep everybody moving at a sustainable pace through all of these various wickets. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Board? Questions, feedback? Great progress. Love that we have benchmarks that we can come back against and measure against. You guys are doing a wonderful job as an organization. I couldn't be more proud of where we are today versus where we were a few years ago. And to be able to see we're just going to continue to check those points off is really exciting. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Item 7, discuss local and regional updates and legislative issues. I believe we have a couple of small legislative visits that are getting scheduled currently. And board member Jaworski is going to be heading down to Austin to talk with our representative Mitch Little, I think next week. Wednesday. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. I know Austin is definitely top of mind for many of us in the transit world or local government world or just in the world at this point. So we'll see how that goes. We'll just kind of wander around the table. Kristen, you have anything to add to update Pat?
Like Representative Andy Hopper's coming to see me and serve them, so see how that goes.
Wonderful. Yeah, and you've got a presentation tonight for
The Native Plant Society.
Native Plant Society, so that's
Bragging on the city of Louisville.
well, city of Louisville, DCTA is jumping on board. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff going on. So you've driven some great change on that, Pat. Appreciate it. Allison? Dan?
Already covered it.
All right. Nothing there. Just want to remind people, Louisville is celebrating its centennial this year. So we've got all sorts of events and activities going on. And if you're interested in getting tied in or participating, please reach out either to city staff or myself, and we can help you get tied in.
Happy birthday, Mr. Mayor.
The best part about it is it really messes with people that our high school is older than our city. That's really an interesting, yeah, it's very cool.
It doesn't show its age.
No, it does not. Does not. Paul?
We continue to be engaged with the NCT COG and staff on the Regional Transit 2.0 initiative. We reviewed first 2 working documents. They've appreciated our input and the dialogue, and it's going to be great to see the outcomes from that full effort. One other note I'll make is recently the consultant team that's been helping us with some of the analytics work and helping us get our arms around all this data presented an evolution of our methodology, the cost per passenger methodology that we showed to create intermediate service plan phase 1. They showcased that at the Transportation Research Board annual conference recently and kind of got a user's choice award from their peers about for the ways that they were able to automate some of the manual calculations we were doing. And And so it's good to see that, the things that we're doing here being, recognized by others in the industry.
Yeah, it's outstanding.
Mr. Chairman, just, I did think of one thing. Paul and I did a presentation to the Highland Village City Council last week. Paul did a phenomenal job of the staff did a phenomenal job of putting the presentation together. He did a phenomenal job of going through it. There were some good questions from members of council that he fielded very well. Some of them were a little testy, and he took those very well and in stride. But I think overall, a lot of really, really good information was provided to the city council in Highland Village.
Good, glad to hear it. Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of value, and we just keep, as we get down into the numbers, we just keep seeing more and more value getting applied there, which I think is important. We have to make sure that our partners are all getting what they need out of this. So, Judge Eads,
I'm totally good.
Jody,
Thank you.
Paul, anybody else for the greater good? Yes.
The Denton Black Film Festival is currently underway and will go until the 26th at venues all over downtown Denton.
Wonderful. All right. Folks, we do have in our documentation informational reports on safety, service, and ridership. That's for November through December. So if you're interested in how we're doing, based on my perusal of those, we're doing very well. With that, are there any future agenda items or board member requests at this time? All right, we do have another board meeting on February 27th is tentative. I know we're having some conversations about going down to Austin on those days, so keep it blocked, but we may be freeing that up. And then, of course, the strategic work session, January 30th and 31st. I'm really looking forward to that. We'll have, of course, Michael Morris from the COG with the a Mobility 2.0 program, so I'm excited about his conversation. Don't think we have any other reports on items of community interest. We pretty much covered that.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if I may, wanted to share a video with you all that recently got, we posted it on LinkedIn and about one of our employees, and the Federal Transit Administration actually boosted it and put it on and gave us a shout out on it. And so I want to share that with you all real quick, and if we could cue it up.
Hello, my name is Yolanda Harris. I am a customer experience coordinator at Denton County Transportation Authority, and my job is to schedule rides for persons who need transportation to and from medical appointments or to grocery stores or whatever their transportation needs are. Transitioning from NTMC to DCTA has really made a big difference in my life, because it has given me more opportunities to grow, to challenge myself. I am still capable of doing a complete job, even though I am visually impaired. I'm totally blind, but I can still do the same work that a sighted person do. When I was using the other system that we had, I was unable to complete a task. All I could do was just take the request from a customer and put it in an email form, and then my other coworkers would have to schedule the rides. With the system that we're using now, I can talk to the customer, put the request in an email, and then go to our program and schedule the rides myself. And now I feel like I'm a part of the team, and I'm not putting my work off on another coworker. My favorite part, I think, of the job is because I get to talk to people, and it's just so gratifying. Like, I had a phone call talking to another person who was visually impaired, and they didn't think they would be able to make it to their doctor's appointments because they couldn't see, they couldn't drive anymore, and telling them, about our services and that they can do. It was just a positive experience for both of us. The DCTA staff has been very helpful. Whenever I think I found something that I can't do, we work together and make it possible so that I can do. It's just overwhelming to have the opportunity to be employed, to work. Everything is possible as long as you apply yourself and as long as you try.
So thank you all for the chance to share that. Miss Yolanda's she's a wonderful member of our team. We're grateful for her.
Well, and it also speaks to the increased ridership on access, quite frankly. So she's very exciting there. We do have one short item for executive session. So pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071, Two, legal consultation with general counsel. The board of directors will convene in a closed executive session regarding change order amendments with the Rio Grande Pacific Corporation for A-Train operations and maintenance. All right, we will be in closed session. All right, we're gonna resume back into regular session, and as there is no further action to be taken on today's agenda, the board stands adjourned.